Hello everyone, it's Ashwin Rao. In today's video, it's my honor and privilege to bring you a brand new maker heralding from Bandung, Indonesia with a management team based out of Singapore, led by a shoe and boot enthusiast who decided to take the plunge into high-end boot making, collaborating with a well-established team of highly skilled artisans and craftsmen in Bandung, Indonesia, which, as you know, is a hotbed for shoemaking and bootmaking in today's footwear scene, and emerged with what I consider to be one of the most impressive premieres in terms of high quality footwear put out on the market right off the bat. And this is Kiattoko Handmade, and this is their Oldboy boot. As you can see, the Oldboy is a very unique design, one that we haven't seen very often. It is a derby boot, meaning that it has an open channel lacing system, but it has this very unique brogued pattern around the quarters and back heel that really make it stand out. It's a style that derives from a vintage era of shoemaking, and one that Kiattoko felt was appropriate for today's day and age for bootmaking and shoemaking. This is a boot that we're going to discuss in a lot more detail in today's video. I'm incredibly impressed by what I'm seeing here. As you can see, just looking at your first peeks, how impressive this boot really is. The leather here is a cognac colored shinky shell cordovan, meaning that it's a shell cordovan leather in the cognac colorway, Shinki Hikaku being the tannery producing the shell cordovan. Shinki Hikaku is largely regarded as one of the top 2 or 3 tanneries in the world. You often hear about Horween Tannery out of Chicago and Mariam Tannery out of Italy. Well, Shinki is in that conversation coming out of Japan. There's a number of other wonderful tanneries out there, so not to discount their quality and their work. This, as you can see, is a derby style boot, meaning it has a open channel lacing system, meaning that the facing here is not attached to the vamp. And you can see that it has a brogued cap toe. The details on this brogued cap toe are rather impressive. You can see how lovely the broguing is done intermittently and very cleanly without any asymmetry or stretch on that leather. You can see a double row of stitching here done along the edge of the broguing towards the distal edge of the toe, and more proximally along the edge of the cap toe you're seeing a single row of stitching. And just to pull forward and see a little closer, you can see that this is a slightly asymmetric Munson style last. So it has this rounded toe profile, but it seems a little squared off with a little more substantial taper along the lateral edge, meaning that it kind of bows out ever so slightly, but it doesn't have that more dramatic banana shaped or a more substantial almond shape to it. I would still call this a rounded toe last, and just a really nice last. I actually was able to try this pair on, and it fits incredibly well, given that the last was made to measure to my specific measurements, so very cool. You can see that this particular last has a bit of toe spring attached to it, so that little curl up of the toe here is considered toe spring, so it's not just sitting flush to the ground as many dress shoes do. We see a block style heel with the double stack leather bed, followed by this Dr. Sole half sole, and then a single midsole, pretty thick midsole there, and then you see your welt here, to which there's a 270-degree stitch pattern. Very cleanly well done stitching here. The stitching echoes a fairly rugged, dense broguing pattern. So this isn't a subtle brogue, this is a more deep brogue, which I have videos of being demonstrated made essentially by hand. So this isn't a broguing tool making this, but literally a stamp used. each of these notches is created by hand. So very impressive how symmetric this pattern is. And the stitching done at a high stitch density, probably about between 8 and 9 stitches per inch, to achieve a really clean hand welted stitch pattern. Very impressed here. If we pull in a little closer, you can see a double row of stitches along the edge of this facing and side panel here. You can see the counter panel and then the facing reaching up here towards the collar. We see a rolled collar done well and clean stitching no matter where you see it, either on these double rows where you can see a machine was used to stitch that double row through here, and then a single row along the edge of the eyelets up through here and along the edges of the collar here. One of the more unique characteristics of this boot is the side paneling transitioning midway from a double row stitch to a split of that stitches to create this broguing pattern along the back and other side of this shoe, a quarter away along the back length of that shoe. And the shoe came with a nice shine applied to the edge dressing and heel block, which is a square heel block here. I've seen them do some curved and Cuban style heel blocks as well on their website, but this is a squared off heel block there. There's also a very nice shine applied to the toe. You can see it glistening there. I did enhance that shine ever so slightly with Pure Polish product. It's a 6-inch high boot. So I think I've covered all the details. A couple things of note is how clean this outsole stitching and sole stitch work is done here. Look at how high that stitch density is and how clean that work is done by hand. That is a mark of a very well made shoe. The cleanliness of the pattern of all of the stitching done on the upper, the placement of the eyelets very symmetrically done all the way to the top with this 4 eyelet 2-speed hook and terminal eyelet pattern is really great. And the shoe is lined with a full grain leather lining. If we take a look at the other boot, you see equally well done. Nice natural gloss and luster. Honestly, this is one of the nicest boots I've seen and one of the biggest surprises I've seen receiving a pair of boots and seeing how high quality the makeup was right out of the gates here. The shoe came well presented with generic bags and a generic box because Kiattoko admittedly is a brand new brand and is looking to figure out how to package over time. I sent Kiattoko my measurements, and those measurements were translated into a custom last that was built for my specific measurements and then used to produce this shoe. They have the capacity to do that as well. Kiattoko Handmade, based out of Singapore and made in Indonesia, meaning that the management team for this company is in Singapore, led by a boot enthusiast turned shoemaker and a production team of high quality artisans and craftsmen in the Bandung, Indonesia region. So top-notch boot work here. Don't think you're going to go wrong if you should decide to dive in. If I were to make any comments at all from a negative standpoint, I would say, gosh, very little. I would say just there's the slightest bit of dimpling along the edge of the lasting process in the toe box there, but nothing on the back end here. And even that you would never be able to see other than if I applied that high shine and cast a light specific to that area. You see it goes away as soon as you see that here. This is one of the most impressive premieres of a shoemaker that I've ever seen. Communication was straightforward, efficient, and detailed. I got to see the shoes as they were being made along the way, which was really great. And I had a chance to contribute to some of the design choices as well. So this is a pair that came to me with all the customizations, including my own custom last developed specifically for this pair, a style that I had never received before, as well as a high quality cordovan leather to create the upper, the incredible stitch detail and density that you've already seen in this video. Everything comes together. A very cohesive package, and for the first time out the gate, to have something of this quality show up at my doorstep really blew me away. And I think it'll blow you away too, should you take the plunge. Get it while the going is good right now, because prices are great, efficient, production time in the region of 2 to 3 months. Hope you're doing well. I'll talk to you soon. Take care and goodbye.